are just filled with wonderful readings in these last few weeks of the church year, aren't we? Lots of fire and brimstone, hell and damnation. Some people start to wonder, why are we going to church after all? Don't we get enough of this out in the world where we hear messages of frustration and anger and fear and anxiety? Isn't church for the upbuilding of the people? And oftentimes, if you go to Lutheran Bible camp or even many of our churches, what they decide to do is simply cut part of the lectionary text for today. We read the first half about God rewarding those who have done these incredible works, end it with that, and preach on how good it is for people to live out these acts of mercy, of compassion. However, I think it's significant for us to lodge in this whole text, to listen to what is happening and to be reconnected with who God is calling us to be. This past week I had the opportunity to do Bible study at Augustana Apartments. And as we gathered, we talked about these texts for this living Christ, this reign of Christ, this Christ the King Sunday. And we got to this text from Matthew. And sitting there with folks who are largely in their 80s, several in their 90s, a couple who have now reached that century mark, I asked them if any of them had ever been hungry. They all sat silently. And I said, did any of you live through the Great Depression? All of a sudden the heads start nodding. And I asked again, were any of you hungry? All of a sudden the heads are going up and down. Remembering what it was like to go at times with nothing or very little on the table. The mashed potatoes that had little extras, filler added in. Or the soup that maybe started off not so different from what Judy Madison described a couple of weeks ago. Perhaps not with a rock, but maybe just an almost bare bone, a little bit of onion thrown in. They remembered what it was like to be hungry. I went on to ask them, how many of them had ever been sick? Heads nodded and hands went up. Several had been in the hospital not too long ago with broken hips, with a cold or pneumonia. They knew what it was like to be sick. I asked them, how many had been in prison? Knowing that within that esteemed crowd of good old Augustana Lutherans, probably not too many. But they smiled. And perhaps some knew their own stories or the stories of others and what it was like to be imprisoned. We talked about what it meant to be thirsty, what it meant to go without. All of a sudden, this group there at Augustana was reflecting on their own humanity. What it meant to be in the place of the people that Jesus is describing. I then asked them what it was like when they first moved into Augustana. What was it like to be a stranger and have all of these people around you in this new place? You could see a few of them tearing up a little bit as they thought about what it was like to give up their homes, some of the friends and support network that had surrounded them day by day, and to move into this new place many later in life. As we come together today, I invite you onto that same journey. To think about those places where you have been hungry. Deeply, really hungry. Or thirsty. Perhaps some of you, it's not so much going without water, but what did it mean when you ran that first marathon? And all of a sudden, just were so in need of hydration. What did it mean to be in your home after that hospital stay, longing for people just to come and visit, to see you, almost just to know that you were cared about, connected. You see, in the context of this gospel today, the place that Jesus invites us first is one of recognizing our own humanity. Those things that are real, that let us know that we are alive, struggling, in need of one another. And then Jesus turns the table, inviting us to see ourselves in the face of the other. What does it mean to be the person who walks on by when someone needs to talk? What does it mean to be the person who knows that there's hunger in the world, but our schedule is so busy and we have to do this and get the kids off to school or run off to that meeting? What happens when we lose that sense of connection with the other? It's one of the reasons that I enjoy going to yoga classes, is that initial connection where the teacher says, "Namaste." The God in me meets the God in you. In Christian parlance, we often say, "The Christ in me meets the Christ in you." And here in this text, we are invited deeply and richly to see God in Christ in the other, dwelling profoundly, and then to be in conversation and rich relationship. Now, food and water, shelter, those are a relational piece that draw us closer together, not the end. The end is being connected to one another, to experience what that means. Now, I share a story that a couple of years ago, an individual was in prison. I was asked to go and visit. I got to the prison and had to present a letter with my certifications as a pastor. I had to pull out my driver's license and spend a good 15 minutes making sure everything was in good order. Then go to another place where I would be let in one door, taken up in an elevator, be buzzed through again into another door, buzzed through again to get into a room that was the visiting room with a glass wall in between, sit down and wait while the individual who was in prison was able to come and sit down and talk. What was most profound for me in that moment was sitting across from someone who wanted a deep connection, who wanted to pray together, who wanted to talk together, to know that they were not alone. But also to see the faces of those who are the police officers, the guards. You see, I think it's easy when we are in situations like that to lose sight of the humanity of others. And what happens when someone, particularly in this case a pastor with a collar on, shows up to sit down with someone who is in prison? All of a sudden, I could see the eyes and the facial expressions of the police officers and guards change. That there was a deeper attention to what it meant for this person to be part of humanity, to be in relationship, and the way that they are called into connection, more fully, more deeply, not letting each other off the hook, but saying and asking people for the Christ, the God in them, to meet the Christ or the God in the other, no matter who they are or what their life circumstances are. Profound and perhaps life-changing in that